Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is an excellent evolution of its predecessor when it comes to the gameplay and fixing small problems I had with the previous games. There is a good service concept to the game. However, after finishing its 80-hour plus story, I did feel a bit disappointed with some aspects. Let's talk about it. Hello guys, welcome to a new Ace Ice review, and I have been away again for some time playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 over the last 3 months or so, and I am a little bit late with this review. It's a very big game and it took me almost 90 plus hours to finish, so I'm sorry that I'm not earlier with this review, but I'm finally here with it and I'm going to tell you my opinion of it. So, sit back, relax, enjoy this review and let's take a deep look into Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let's talk a bit about the graphics. The graphics of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are pretty similar to the other two entries. What I am more impressed by with this game is how they were able to fit such a big world on the Switch, because the Switch is pretty weak compared to other consoles. Because when it comes to the scale of the game, it's only bigger than the previous ones. What I am most happy about is the technical side. I haven't experienced any bugs or frame rate drops whatsoever, and that's a great achievement for such a big game on basically mobile hardware. The soundtrack is also on point, just like the previous entries. Awesome boss fight music or field tracks, just like the previous entries. And it's great to see that this tradition is basically continuing from the previous Xenoblade Chronicles games. They had great soundtracks of their own, and it's continuing here with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. My biggest gripe though with the graphics in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are some very uninspired visual distinction between different locations, which Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 did far better in my opinion. So what do I mean with this? When you are traveling through the world, you have big vistas that look very beautiful, especially in the previous games. I will always remember in the first game where you had this basically big plain like beach area, I think it was, next to this big city, and you had falling stars. I think they were sky islands or something, or I could be very wrong. Maybe I can show some footage, and you had these like these falling stars in the background, and it was very visually appealing. Or this big glowing forest that they had in the first game. And Xenoblade Chronicles 2 also did this very well. In 3 though, it's sometimes very bland with its presentation. There are some beautiful locations, but they were not really on the main path and were just hidden away in some side path for side quests, or they were just very low in numbers. Visually, it doesn't really look that distinct to me than the previous games were. Now, let's get to gameplay. This is where Xenoblade Chronicles 3 really shines though, with over-delivery of different gameplay mechanics where it can even feel too much at some point. A deep combat system, Ouroboros fusion, switchable classes, crafting, side quests, colony affinity ranks. It's a lot of stuff. The combat system is just as deep, if not even more complex than the previous games. You have your standard auto battle system where you have to manage 7 characters at the same time with topples and breaks. It gets a bit overwhelming sometimes visually of what's happening on the screen. If you're a Xenoblade Chronicles fan, you know how this feels, but you will get the feeling for it pretty fast though, and mastery of this combat system is pretty important. Enemies can get pretty difficult if you don't manage your characters well with the art system as well as the gem system that can give you stat boosts if you want to do, for instance, a attack up boost where you are in combat, you will see these rings on the battlefield where you stand on, and your characters in this ring will get attack up, for instance. The chain attacks is the real star though. It's in depth and it can give you a real edge in combat, and it can even boost your XP points if you can execute them well. The biggest addition though is the hero system, and that gives you an extra party member that you can switch out with its own unique class. And every main party member can master every class, which gives the game a lot of experimentation. So once you finished a class to level 10, that's the max that you can go with one party member, you can switch to a different class, or stay in the same class with a different weapon, and that can also give you new arts if you level this weapon up. It's really in depth and I love this stuff, and it gives more room for this experimentation, which I love in games, and also more freedom. Of course, keep in mind, the heroes cannot actually do this just like the normal party members, so the heroes cannot change their class, but you can get the hero class and level that up, so that's pretty cool. The side quests also got a big upgrade. My complaint with previous games were that the side quests were pretty lacking. Well, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 fixes this with its hero quests that give more backstory to individual characters as well as the heroes. The Ouroboros fusion mechanic is also pretty neat, and it ties in well with the main storyline. You have your own Ouroboros skill tree with its own upgrades. It's all pretty in depth. The tutorials are also improved from the previous title, which was a really big sticking point for me, especially with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I remembered when I played that game and they were going quickly over all the gameplay mechanics in the beginning, and then nope, no more tutorials throughout the game. They throw everything at you, and that was very confusing. In Xenoblade Chronicles 3 they fixed this. Throughout the game you get explanations for everything, for the combat system, for the Ouroboros fusion, when it's introduced as a gameplay mechanic, and the pacing of the tutorials are far better than the previous ones. The overall gameplay mechanics is the real shining star of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, with so much to do and to discover and improvements that evolve upon its predecessors. It's the biggest and the best part of Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
These guys are tough.
I hate to say it, but I think you're right.
Now, story. This is the part where I am a bit mixed on. The initial concept and premise of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are actually pretty good. It discusses heavy topics like war and life and death, the meaning of life. The main characters are well enough fleshed out, and you certainly will enjoy your time with the story and the character development. That's all pretty well done. However, there are some big kinks that I can't really overlook. The first one is the pacing. The story could have been told way shorter, in a shorter runtime. You can easily cut out almost 20 to 30 hours of this story length. Really, you aren't missing much if you would do this. There are some filler quests in this game, or moments, cutscenes that were too long, where I was, please, go on, I know this now, let's just get on with the next big event. And sometimes they would introduce quests just purposely to delay the storytelling, and I was like, this is not necessary whatsoever. Then, secondly, there are some plot points in the lore and backstory that are really not explained at all, or just forgotten about, which left me a bit disappointed. Now, I cannot very much spoil what these plot points are. Yeah, I'll have to see that in the game if you play it yourself. They are small things though, so don't be alarmed that they are big plot points. But they are, let's say, big enough for me to notice them. It will vary upon you if you would notice it. But for me, it was a sticking point. The main villain is also pretty disappointing as well. The game serves as a good standalone story, but it doesn't really connect well with the previous games, which I did expect because it's basically the closing game of the Klaus saga. If you guys don't know who Klaus is, that's a pretty important character in the Xenoblade story. You won't be spoiled if I say this, because you will have to play the game regardless to know who this character is in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2. But I was expecting more of tie-ins with the previous games, explanations that I just did not really get with this one. Another disappointment are the colonies. This is going to sound weird, but there are too many of them, especially without no real distinction, which I already talked about in the previous graphics part. There are no towns, for instance, in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did have, and it feels like a step down. The game is of course military based and it serves its purpose for the story, but it doesn't really feel like a lived-in world. It feels more artificial to me, and this might be a hot take, which I fully understand. This is a little spoiler, so if you want to skip to the Ace reflection part, I suggest you do it now. You are warned. But basically, there are 3 big places in the game that were visually good distinct. The city, which was a drastic different experience when you get there, halfway point, and the 2 castles, the Agnes Castle and the Kevis Castle. But they came too late in my opinion, and they still feel more like a military base. And at some point when you play a game for 80 hours, it feels a little bit all the same. These colonies feel similar and they are just characters walking around doing their stuff. You can talk with them and you get some more in-depth lore, but they at some point feel all too distinct, similar to each other. But at the end of the day, the story does work. It has strong characters with good writing, which is the most important aspect anyways at the end of the day.
Cut it out! We're your friends here! Did they order you to destroy Ouroboros too?
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 left me a bit mixed at the end of the ride. But the positives do heavily outweigh the negatives, and it's still a worthy sequel for the average Xenoblade fan to enjoy, as well as the average JRPG fan. While I did wish for a more interweaved storyline with its predecessors, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 does serve as a good standalone title, with greatly improved gameplay mechanics and side quests that will entertain you for hours on end. It won't really reach JRPG greatness, but it's definitely a good purchase for your Switch library. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 scores a 8.5 out of 10, with a scale score to 9. So, did you guys enjoy this review, this Ace Ice review? Let me know in the comment section down below. As you guys noticed, I put the skill score a little bit higher to 9, while my own score is 8.5 out of 10, because I do believe the audience will enjoy this game more than I did. So that's just a prediction on my part. But for me, 8.5 out of 10 seems reasonable in my opinion. Thank you guys for watching. As always, give this video a like if you enjoyed the review. Comment in the comment section down below if you don't agree on something. We can have a discussion. And of course, subscribe to Ace Ice and visit our website aceice.com. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next Ace Ice review. Bye bye.